Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here today. So please go ahead and share your information via chat, introduce yourselves. I'm very excited to have Mary Rounds and Lynne Hardin here today. So thank you for being here. It's going to be a terrific discussion. Lynne Hardin and let's see here, Legal Shield are our sponsors today. So we are in webinar format. The reason why we do that is because we want to tape these, and we've had up to 1,000 people watch the videos after the fact. So appreciate your participation here. All right, and I want to remind everybody that we want to give you a chance to get to know each other in person. We do a networking session every fourth Friday of the month. So on the 28th, that's our next networking session. And please join us then and bring your friends. Okay, quickly, Purse Power is working to help women use their massive purchasing power to drive positive change. We believe that if women who make 80% of all purchasing decisions would choose to buy from the companies that actively promote women, and we do it in mass, and we could create a funding stream for battered women's shelters in the process, we could shatter glass ceilings and change lives. So that's what we're hoping to do with Purse Power. All right, now the calls, we're trying to connect you with each other, connect you with national leaders, connect you with terrific resources like you're going to hear from today to just help you through this difficult time. And then I want to shout out to any of our investors or shareholders who are on the line. Thank you for being here. The meeting flow, I'll introduce Lynne Hardin, our sponsor, and then she's going to introduce Mary. Please share your questions, and you're doing it on chat, and introduce yourselves. And then later in the broadcast, we'll go ahead and do the Q&A. If you go ahead and put your questions in the Q&A block, we'll go ahead and answer them a little later on. Okay, so let me introduce Lynne. Lynne is the founder and president of Justice for All. She's a certified professional facilitator, and a lot of her work has been in the areas of health, education, and public policy. She's initiated legislation on a landmark breast cancer bill, which funds underserved women in our state in Oklahoma. She has also served as the executive director of the Oklahoma School of Science and Math. She's on the board of the Oklahoma Independent College and University Foundation, and also on Northwest Claflin High School Foundation Board. She's got experience in international trade, real estate, development, and banking, and she's the author of a book called The Magic of Why. So let me go ahead and hand it over to Lynne. Lynne, would you please begin the process with Mary? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for the introduction. And when we were talking earlier about entrepreneurs, and Mary said, that's not my play, that's not my forte. And it's so interesting because I've had exactly 2 W-2 jobs in my life. I have done nothing but, entrepreneurship. So it's that exchange with all of us and the differences that we have that make all of this so interesting. So Donna, thank you, and thank you for Purse Power and driving women. Mary Rounds, I got involved with Legal Shield as a member of the product in 1994. I had been in a landmark case, Park Bank, Jennings versus Park Bank. It was the first bank closure in Florida, and I was a major stockholder. And so we actually took precedent in that case over the FDIC in getting our funds. But guess what? No one really got paid except the attorneys. So all of the stockholders who had millions and millions of dollars in this bank, and it was just at $1 billion, lost everything except pennies and pennies on the dollar. So I knew the value of this service immediately. And it was in 2010 that I actually was asked to come in and do B2B, working with employers and employees and businesses that needed the service. And because I had had such a wonderful experience with the service, I got involved doing this as my business. I had been in Japan 3 times in 2019, South Africa, and actually in the United Arab Emirates. So this was a gift for me to be able to stay home. And Mary Rounds has been the most remarkable. She will tell you about her background, but aside from being an attorney in family law and mitigation, and she's done a lot of different areas of law. She's done business law. But the best thing that I found about Mary is always been her heart for the issue. it's easy to, law's a business, but she has always gone the step beyond. So Mary Rounds, I am delighted to have you with us today and appreciate so much you offering your time and advice. And so let me just start with give us a little bit of your backstory and how did you get in a place? And I know that you were one of the really founding and writers of the law for this kind of subscription service. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks, Lynn. That's very kind of you. Law is a profession, but for me, it's also a calling. And there's nothing better in life than to be able to make a living doing what you're called to do, right? So I feel that I'm a really lucky person. So myself personally, I didn't have one of those straight trajectory lives that we imagine people have, right? High school, college, law school, always wanted to be a lawyer, heading in that, right? Not at all, right? A very meandering path. I grew up in a family that I'm the oldest of 13 children. We grew up on a farm family without plumbing when I was little. And I didn't know what lawyers were or what they did. I always wanted to be a mom. That was really where my heart was. And it took me a long time to get that done. I finally, at age 43, adopted as a single person, which is a little bit backwards from how people usually do this, right? And so how I ended up as a lawyer, I worked in public service and there was something missing. I knew I needed some training and I wanted to go back to school in public administration. And I was working at a workforce type public agency where I gave proficiency tests to people. I took one myself and it said, you should be a lawyer, and there was nothing to the left or right of it. It's like, you have no choice. And I thought, really? Huh? Right? And so that really appealed to me. I didn't really know that might be something where I could use all of my skills. And by the way, some of you may be the glass half full person, right? The pessimist, which in our culture is not really something that you want to say you are. But I found that being a roving, what could go wrong here is really a great skill for a lawyer. So I applied that skill and did go to law school. And I have had a varied career. It has not been a straight trajectory either. I've worked in very large firms. I've had my own firm. And that, Lynn, is where I figured out that I am not an entrepreneur, right? And so you have to know yourself. And it's taken me a few years to know myself. And you can see by the gray in my hair that it's taken a few years. But I discovered that is not where I excel. And that I was really happy when I found this work at Riggs Avenue. I was really happy because I had how old was she then? Maybe a 6-year-old daughter who needed to eat. And I was able to work with the same kinds of clients that I'd worked with at the poverty agency that I was working for. And it was a perfect mix, right? So it was a sweet spot. It took me years to find this. So I found a sweet spot interacting with people. And these are interacting with, I'm a people person, like I'm just a person. I'm just a regular person, right? So the people I grew up with, farmers and business owners and families, those are the folks that I interact with today. And it's a great feeling. So how did I end up here? I loved it so much that I just poured myself into it, and also determined that being the oldest of 13 gave me some skills in telling other people what to do, or liking to right, making sure things are going right. And so I worked myself into management, and today what I do, a lot of my time is spent managing the work we do here at Riggs Avenue for 34,000 Legal Shield members, in addition to my regular private practice. So the firm, that's me. I'm just not, right? I didn't follow a typical trajectory. My partners, if you know anything about Riggs Abney at all, I have David Riggs and Mike Turpin are two of my partners. They're amazingly committed to justice and in community service. And all of my partners are here at Riggs Abney. This is a full service firm. We take care of people and we handle businesses and corporations. So it really was a coming home when I came here.
Well, let me ask you, now that you're talking about business, certainly we've been in uncharted times. And what do you believe are some of the risks that the coronavirus has brought on? The changes in our traditional businesses, what is that causing, from your perspective, how does that work for a small business owner?
Sure, it's we all have experienced huge disruptions. So and honestly, and many of us have seen that what we create in the face of disruptions is amazing, and we've started to see how creative we can be when we have to be, right? So certainly it disrupted our practice. We had to adjust quickly to protect our employees and our clients. We had to close our offices to the public. We were in the team that I work with, we were able to, overnight, I sent a team of over 50 lawyers and staff home with equipment so that we could continue to do what we do from a safe space. And then over time, we're adjusting ourselves. So we've gone through, what a lot of people have gone through. We've been fortunate in that we were able to continue to take care of our clients. It exposes, obviously, it's exposing all of us to risk. So, for example, when your employee is working from home, they're still working. So they're still considered during working hours, they're in the workplace. So we have strict work from home policies, as I'm sure many of you do. And, I have on there a list of send me a picture of your home office. Some of them came in rather late because people were like, oh, let me get this cleaned up first, right? But it's I'm only partly in jest. It's important to know many things. For example, we sent them home with their ergonomic chairs and the equipment they needed because you want your employees to be as safe as they are in the workplace. If someone is hurt while they're working from home during their working time, it is still covered under workers' compensation. So for the purposes of our own, protection of our staff and the protection of the firm, you have to consider a remote employee is working and is covered in the same ways as they're in the office. Also, everyone has confidential information. You all do. And many of you are in a profession or a business that has, in addition to your own confidential information, you've got client information, you may have medical information, you may have financial information. And it's challenging enough protecting that, in the borders of your office. And then try protecting that in 50 different locations, sometimes in other states. You just have to do it, right? So you put things in place. You can't allow people to use their private email. It seems a little innocuous at first. Let me just work around. I can't get this to myself, so I'm going to email it to myself and then print it at home. And all those things that seem to an employee to be a quick, easy solution are not good, right? You have client information on someone's personal email account. So then now Gmail or Yahoo has it. So obviously we have to think through and extend our thoughts and our protections to the home if people are still working from home. And we will, in my team, we will always have the majority of our folks now working from home. The upside of it, many of them have kids and it is really working for them. It has shortened their commute. There's, there are the challenges of working from home, of course, with the schools closed or daycares closing. But by the same token, it has really worked out well for our staff and for most of our lawyers. So there are positives as well. I'm sure you have other questions about that too.
Yeah, well, and there is another question that came up, and it was, how do you decide on one business structure versus another, i.e. sole proprietorship, partnership, LLC, C Corp, S Corp? And what are the legal ramifications of choosing one versus another?
Okay, so
it's sort of a three-part question, maybe.
It is. That's fine. That's
Yeah.
fine. So this is a really important thing to think about at the beginning, if you possibly can. I am not an entrepreneur, but I chase entrepreneurs all the time, right? I started with two of my 9 brothers who were the kind of entrepreneurs where they were always ready to step into a pit, right? And so, preparing ahead of time is important. So this is an important question. So it's, now many of you are, those of you who are CPAs and accountants, now's a good time to go warm up your coffee. So you want to distinguish between a business entity, so that's you're a sole proprietor, or you operate in a limited or a general partnership, or you have formed a limited liability company or a corporation. That's your business entity. And then there's a tax status, which is a separate thing. So and when we talk about taxes, we're talking about federal income taxes. So there's a tax status. So your tax status, if you're operating as a sole proprietor, and proprietor is a thing that the law puts on top of you. If you're an individual person and you just get up and you operate your business, you're considered a proprietor. We know what your tax status is. You're self-employed. At the end of the year, you show your profits on your Schedule C, you pay self-employment taxes on that. That's your tax status. If you form a limited liability company, that will stay your tax status if it's one member. So distinguish between them. So with regard to figuring out what kind of business entity you want to use, I have my druthers about it. I don't like partnerships. It's all. So, and there are reasons for that, right? So if there are 2 or more of you who dash headlong into running a business together, and this happens all the time, my partner and I, we're going to run this business, and she's doing this and I'm doing this, and we're going to split the profits 50-50. And then already I'm like, okay, put your seatbelt on because I have a conversation to have with you. Then the law imposes on you a general partnership. And an Oklahoma general partnership is really easy to start and operate. You just go about your business, and when there's an important decision, you sit down with your partner and hash it out. But the downsides of that, got it. Well, there's some technical questions that we might be able to get to. The downside of that is that you are liable for, just like a sole proprietor, all of your business debts, and your own personal negligence, your own negligent omissions or actions. But you're also personally liable for your partner's negligence and the debts of the partnership. And so general partnership is not a good way to transact business in Oklahoma. You want to think before you leap in there and take a minute to figure out, do we want to protect ourselves? So, you want to choose a corporation or a limited liability company. And almost everyone is choosing LLCs now. And there are lots of reasons for that. And your accountant can talk to you about why that is. But from my standpoint, it's incredibly flexible. And an attorney can actually form and meld for you an LLC that works in a way that you want it to work. And your tax professional can help you choose a tax status, because an LLC can choose a tax status. So without getting too much into the weeds of this stuff, people are lots of times asking about or aware of what they're calling an S Corp or an S corporation. That is a tax status. It's not actually an entity. So it's a tax status of a corporation that qualifies for pass-through taxation, meaning corporation doesn't pay any income taxes, the owners do. That tax status is available to corporations and it's available to limited liability companies. And why you might choose something like that, as I say, that gets into the weeds of it, has to do with whether you can maximize your after-tax profits, right? And it's not nirvana, so don't jump into that either, right? Right. Talk about what the consequences might be under your circumstances, because if you've got a couple of you operating a business without employees, and you're going to increase your payroll expenses and those kinds of things. So I suppose all of this comes down to, if at all possible, don't jump blindly into it. It really doesn't take very long to have a conversation with a couple of professionals to get you thinking, what's the best way for us to operate, or for me to operate? What protects me? And in the end, what is going to be my best choice? I hope that helps.
Yes, indeed. And going right along with that, one of our other questions was classifying contractors as employees, or the difference between and the ramifications of independent contractors versus employees, and the ramifications if you get that wrong.
This is a really, really important issue. It really is. And I understand how this comes into play, because starting a business is a daunting thing. And most of us don't start with a wad of cash. We're starting with our own resources. So I understand how this comes into being. So what Lynne is talking about is, I'm needing someone to work with me or for me, a person to perform some kind of labor, and I'm deciding, do I employ the person or can I enter into a contract with that person? So I start with, look at it from the standpoint of, is that person an independent business owner like you are? So if they're an independent business owner and they've got a business card and they have some clients and you're just one of them, you're good to go. Enter into a contract with them to perform that service. Put it in writing. We like things in writing for lots of reasons. One, it's a lot easier to figure out what you all agreed to. It's rather frustrating when you ask me, what are my rights under this agreement? And I have to turn it back on you and say, well, I don't know because it's not in writing. So what's in your agreement? So a written agreement is really helpful, right? So if you can tell, that's an easy one. That's an independent business owner. That's in a sense a subcontract, right? It gets a little dicier when you don't know if they got other clients and they don't have a business card and all that. And I understand how this comes to be, because it's inexpensive to do this. All you have is the cost of their hourly cost, is how many hours they're putting in, right? If you're contracting with someone, they're responsible for their own workers' compensation insurance. They're responsible for their own liability insurance. They're responsible for their own self-employment taxes. They're responsible for figuring out how they're going to live if they don't have any work, right? With an employee, right? We are withholding federal FICA. We are paying for workers' compensation. We are paying unemployment insurance, and we're listing them as an employee with the Oklahoma Employment Security Commission, right? And so there are all those things in place. That's more expensive. If we're large enough to have benefits, then we're paying our share of that. I understand. I totally do. It's really expensive. So here's the danger, though, of entering into what people tell me is contract labor. You have a roofing company and you hire someone as a contractor to get up on the roof and do the roof for your roofing company. That's not a contractor, it's your employee, right? Because you're directing their work, and they are performing labor for you, and they are doing something that is in the ordinary course of your business. They're most likely an employee. And I'll tell you who in Oklahoma is going to be the strictest about that, and that's the Employment Security Commission, with regard to unemployment. So if that person is laid off, you don't have any jobs, and they apply for unemployment, you know, and you respond, they're an independent contractor, they'll look into it. And there is, for several years now, there's been a lot of information sharing among agencies. So we have found that, you know, an unemployment claim for someone that was paid as a contractor who's really an employee, then will result in a Department of Labor investigation. Then CompSource comes in there and looks for work comp, and then you're paying for, right? So let's say the person on the roof gets hurt. You haven't covered them for workers' compensation. So if they're considered to be an employee and not a contractor, you're paying all their medical bills. So it's like a lot of things that are a little bit easier to get into in the beginning, but have big consequences. If everything goes right, if nothing goes wrong, then nothing goes wrong. If something goes wrong, there are huge consequences. I've had clients put out of business by, and this one particular I'm thinking about was the Arkansas Workforce Commission. So you can't look to your industry either, because industry by industry, they've been making these determinations, right? And so even if everyone in the industry is paying a certain kind of person as a contractor, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work out. And for them, the Arkansas Workforce Commission determined, no, those people are all your employees, and you owe us all the back unemployment taxes and some penalties and some bad things. But anyway, so here's the scary stuff, right? It is important, and I understand financially it's difficult to do. The safest thing to do is to employ someone who might be considered to be an employee. And then if it's really financially not doable, you know, you want to get some legal advice. And you know, we work with our clients on setting up arrangements in the best way possible, but we can never guarantee that a state or federal agency is going to agree that it is an independent contract relationship.
I see. Donna, I'm not sure how we are on time, but I believe I've seen some questions come up. So do you want to come in and see if are we ready for Q&A?
We sure can. Hang on. Yep, we sure can do it. Let's go ahead and do it. So Ann Elliott is asking, with so much flexibility in the home environment, how do you determine what working hours are?
Donna, I'm sorry, we missed. Did you get it, Mary? I missed some of it.
Yeah, with so much flexibility in the home workplace, right? How do we determine what working hours are? Well, it's obviously it's more difficult. You know, my current challenge is I am management by walking around. So you can imagine how frustrated I can be sometimes. I can't see my people. I can't walk by, and you can tell when you walk by someone's office if something's not quite right or they're not feeling well, and you sit down for a chat and resolve it right then and there. And I can't do that right now. But even in an office, I mean, obviously there's a rush for the door at 5 for the staff, and then attorneys and other professionals and things are there until they leave. Even there, it can be challenging because your go-getters who don't want you to know that you've overloaded them with work are working overtime without telling you.
Oh no!
Right? Scary proposition. So more so at home because I can't see them, but we have to communicate, so I can tell if they're emailing me at 8 p.m. You want to be mindful of it. Obviously, you have to be mindful of the law, overtime rules. And so there's nothing wrong with asking someone to work overtime. By the way, you can ask someone to work overtime. You can ask someone to work a 20-hour day in Oklahoma. You just have to pay them properly, right? But it's keeping track of it. It requires vigilance. And if someone has some really wonderful management software, not too expensive, that allows you to constantly interact with folks, hit me up because I can't, to be able to see what people are doing. It is challenging, right? But it is the same challenge in just a little bit different clothing to make sure that you're mindful of what people are doing, that you're clear with people that it's not that you don't want to pay people overtime, it's you're asking them not to do it without permission, and be really clear about that. Because, I get calls all the time that they told me they're never going to pay us any overtime. Let's say, let's find out if they said that or if they said, do not work it without permission, right? Watch your words.
Those are two different things entirely.
Yeah,
different
right.
things.
I hope that answers the question.
Okay, Nan McKay is saying on the W-9 form, if it's a single employee LLC, it appears you check sole proprietor. Is that correct? Do you know?
Single employee. Oh, single owner LLC.
Mm-hmm.
And she's on the W-9, she's checking.
She's saying that she's supposed to check sole proprietor. Is that correct?
Oh, I'd have to pull the W-9 and get my choices. Okay. But hey, I'm happy to answer your question. And so, you know what? Is it against your rules for me to give out my email address?
No, go right ahead.
Yeah. So it's mrounds@riggsabney.com. So it's just my first initial, my last name @riggsabney.com. So if you get something like that that's going to require taking a look at it and checking out our options, just shoot me an email, and that way I can say hi to you.
Okay. All right. If you don't mind, Lynn, I'll just go ahead and pick up. There's also this question about people working at home. You've got the confidentiality, perhaps, now that you're seeing what's going on in the background in their home. The other thing is HIPAA. If they've got coronavirus, knowing about HIPAA, what you can say, can't say, no, can't know. I mean, are there other complications of having people work from home that you can talk to?
Yeah. So, we're interacting over the phone, but right now we're interacting online. Mm-hmm. And so I do this with employees as well. So, everyone got a little nervous back in the day when we all started doing this, and some school lessons got hacked in Zoom rooms, right? And so, by the way, the courts went remote as well, like the rest of us. And that terrified them so much that the Oklahoma Supreme Court forbade any Oklahoma judge from using Zoom, which is really unfortunate because Zoom has all kinds of tools now, and you can totally protect, in my opinion, but check on that. You can protect even the protected health information in a properly done Zoom meeting. Right? So you just disable all the functions that would allow someone to record or take it to the cloud, or you disable your chat disable saving the chat, make sure you know who's in there, have a waiting room. So there are ways that you can protect in the virtual sphere, the same way you protect who gets into the conference room and who opens that file. So just be mindful of it and get some help with it. So remote has changed. What has it changed? I said everything, right? So, we have to be really careful about, as I said, client information on personal emails, that kind of thing. So all of our internal conversations on Zoom are controlled and with waiting rooms and that kind of thing. And if anyone else has any other questions, throw that in the Q&A about working remote. It's challenging. I'm not working remotely now. I have a home office. I live in a neighborhood in Tulsa where I don't expect us to get a lot of attention from the internet providers. And so it's just, the internet's iffy, guys. Has anybody encountered this? Internet is iffy. And we work through a virtual private network, by the way. So when all of our remote workers go through a VPN into our office servers, and so we are all, you can't tell that someone is remote except when you step out of your office, they're not there, right? So that's another way to protect is use a VPN. But using a VPN also is tough to handle technologically. So I'd be really interested in hearing from how other people are handling these things. It'd be great to have a forum on that.
Okay, let me go ahead and keep asking questions here. Jean Kelly's saying, what kind of liability for injury do I have when people are working from home? She had to leave for the meeting for a minute, so she's saying,
sure.
I don't think you covered this. Yeah.
Exactly the same liability you have as if they're working in your office. So, and workers' compensation it's what we call strict liability, meaning it doesn't have to be your fault, right? So more history than you want to know, right? So in the before times, so someone get hurt at work, they could sue you, but they would have to prove negligence in order to recover for their injury against you. And so that right has been taken away from employees and replaced with a compensation structure that you may or may not like, and we could have a conversation about that offline. But that compensation structure basically says if someone is working and they are hurt, then as long as it meets certain requirements, then they don't have to prove that it was your fault. So if they are working in the office and they develop carpal tunnel, if they slip on something and bang their head, all those things. Same at home. They develop carpal tunnel. If they slip on something and bang their head, they're working, they're covered in the comp system. So we're responsible for them. When we send people home, what we've done is we have extended our office out into the Netherlands, right? We just have offices everywhere. And I think it helps us it's a little scary to think about that, but it helps us to think in those terms that we have offices everywhere. And as we think about our exposure to liability and how to protect ourselves.
How about the working hour question? So is the liability just during working hours, quote unquote, if they're working at home, or?
Yeah. So, what if, how do I know when they quit for the day, right? Because maybe they'll leave their computer up. So if I have I have staff members who answer the phone, and they're connected in a computerized phone. It's like a little mini call center. So when they log out for the day, we know they've logged out and they're done, right? So then everyone else, right, is doing what they do when they do it. So when are they working? It's a challenge. So if they're working and they're hurt, then it's our responsibility. If they're not working and they're hurt, it's not our responsibility. And then it gets into a fun question of fact. So what can we do about that is to continue to interact and be mindful of what people are doing. If it's important to you to restrict the hours that someone is working within, then make sure that that's clear to people and that you have some way of monitoring that and reminding people when they go off the rails a little bit. For some of our staff, that is important. For some of our staff, it isn't. And then we're on the honor system for them logging their time in a computer system. In the end, what? A lot of times people are on the honor system anyway. Yeah. And so it's a different way of spot checking. So it's like everything else, we mix respect with vigilance.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Jackie Pearsall is asking, are you getting employee versus independent contractor questions from the cannabis industry?
That's another conversation altogether. Actually, I'm not getting that question, but I have a lot of clients in the cannabis industry. And they talk about entrepreneurs, talk about chasing entrepreneurs. I'm not getting a lot of that. That's interesting because but the questions that I get obviously are related to setting up a cannabis business. And the chasing has to do with policing that I know every little detail I can find out about anyone who contacts us, because people are coming up with some very interesting, possibly great money-making ideas that are not legal. Not like they're crimes, but they're not strictly covered under the structure. And by the way, for anyone who's curious, all of it is a crime, right? It's all a felony, federally speaking, and I have to remind everyone of that all the time. You're all committing felonies under federal law, but as long as people are staying within a legal structured system. So if you are in the business or someone in the business, my typical lectures on getting your structure set up cleanly and properly are not recommendations. They're basically, in the cannabis industry, they're demands. Like, we won't work with you if you won't set this up right. So that's a little off of the exact question, but it's an important industry right now. By the way, Oklahoma is probably the best state to be in the business because we have the fewest regulations. We have fewer regulations than states that have legal use for adults. It's easier to determine what the law is in Oklahoma than any other place. And something that I particularly like, because my clients are, retired farmers in Western Oklahoma, they're folk, right? Is that the little guy gets a shot at it in Oklahoma. And so that's my little thing about what I like about the Oklahoma cannabis structure is that regular folk get a chance to start a business and, farm a crop that is a cash crop that is actually something they can live on. It's
interesting. Okay, so I want to combine a couple of questions here. So the biggest risk small business owners have is around employees, hiring, firing employees, right? And then you've also got this complication of drug use, marijuana use, and you as an employer, what you can do, can't do, should do, shouldn't do.
Oh my. Yeah. That's a whole conversation, right? A whole conversation maybe to be had at some point. Anytime we're working with people, if you look at some of the literature on trauma and the effect of trauma on people, you will very often find that the most traumatic incidents in people's lives are death of a loved one and loss of a job. So recognizing I've been through it myself, right? I was downsized out of a large law firm. And do you think I ever forget that? No, that lives with me every day as I'm talking to employees and employers about the reality of someone's job, right? So one, it's extremely important and personal to people. And to the extent that we remember that and are developing relatedness with people and treating people with respect. My colleague Melvin Hall does a lot of employer-employee advice and a lot of employment litigation. Our firm does a lot of employment litigation, both directions. So we see what it is that triggers massive upsets and what tends to trigger the nuclear option, a lawsuit, is someone who feels disrespected, miscommunication, misunderstandings, feeling of loss of respect. So yes, it's challenging, right? So you have to protect your business, you have to protect employees, right? And sometimes people don't feel like being protected sometimes, right? And so you have to set up rules that protect employees from other employees. So there's all this balancing to be done. But I'm convinced that we can all do it with respect to people and with an understanding of how important someone's job is to them and never treat that lightly. Then as with anything else, set it up appropriately from the beginning. Protect yourself by, if you possibly can, handling it as an employment situation rather than a contract situation. You will have more ability to control in an employment situation. Then documentation is important. And I think everyone knows this, but I look at documentation not as a cover yourself kind of thing. I look at it as a clarity thing. It's like entering into a contract as a business owner, any contract you enter into. Yes, it's for protection at some point, but it's really for clarity, right? So things that are put in writing, when two people look at a writing, that's when you begin to understand that people don't understand each other, right? We really don't. Years ago, I did a lot of contract litigation at one point, and I finally understood, after struggling to find out what really happened, I finally understood that there is no what happened. There is no actual what happened. There is what each person carried away. And even with a written agreement, each person carries away how they interpret those words. And you can't possibly, as much as we try, as long as our contracts are, you can't possibly write out every solution to every possible future situation. So given that, right, we get as close as we can. So when you put something in writing, it's for clarity. It's to help people to understand as much as possible, to be in the same space and to understand each other. And so documenting things gives you clarity. Documenting something helps an employee to know where they stand. People want to know where they stand. Uncertainty is very difficult to deal with. So, you're faced with tough situations. You all have been. You're being faced with these things all the time. And the best we can do is to treat someone with respect as an equal human being, and to provide as much clarity as possible. So it's easier on someone to know, this is what we need from you, these exact things as close as you can get, and this is what we can't have you do. And if this happens again, we just can't continue to work with you, and have it be really, really clear. And sometimes that's the best you can do. I hope that helps.
Yeah. And as a 30-year HR person, I have had to let go lots and lots of people. And I think if you respect people's self-esteem in the process, I've never been sued. So I think that's, when you protect people's self-esteem and you remember that, you protect the company, in my opinion.
And that's difficult for you too.
Yeah.
Right. Right. That is not, you and anyone else who's ever been through it, this is not a fun thing to do. This is it's challenging, and that's when, it brings out the best and the worst in people. And so that kudos to you that you've handled it in such a way that never resulted in a suit.
Knock on wood. Knock on wood. All right. Any further questions, and then I'll hand it back to Lynn. So anything else people want to ask here? Okay, Lynn, would you mind, could I pass it back to you, and maybe we can close it up?
Okay, sure. Thank you. And Mary, thank you so much. I know that I told you it'd be about 30 minutes, and you've given us much more time than that. So thank you so much for being on and answering the questions, and we appreciate it so much. And I find it fascinating and very valuable. I have a young man that works with me who just went through a thing, and he said, and so they asked me 3 questions, and I said my name, and I had anxiety, and so now I have a valid cannabis use. And I go, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. You never know what you don't know, really. I don't. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure.
And we're going to let you sign off.
Okay. I want to do one last thing before she does. Would you please tell us the top 3 things that you hope we have learned from you, and the top 3 actions you want us to take?
Oh, wow. Okay.
Okay.
Really, do what you love. Mm-hmm. Right. And so I lived a meandering process of zoning in on, this is working for me, this is not, this is working for me, this is not, this is working for me. And top 3 things. So I would say, get yourself prepared. Now, I'm going to talk about hiring lawyers, but I'm talking about mentors, accountants, lawyers, professionals. Use a team, have people help you, so that you're not spending 6 hours doing something that would take you 30 minutes because you got set up ahead of time, or cleaning up a mess that would never have been created if you'd structured it right in the first place, or if you knew to do this simple little thing. So do what you love. Don't be afraid of using your team. Get a team. And I would say, my partner Mike Turpin always says one of the keys to happiness is work that matters. And I totally agree with that. Now, actions to take. Yeah. Take some stock, step back for a second, right? And look at what's going on. Look to see, is there something missing I could put in? And don't go into the morality territory. It's not about you're good or you're bad, you're smart or you're not smart. You're right. It's all about, does it work or does it not work? And can I put something in that's going to make it work well? And then get some help to put that in.
Okay. All right. Perfect. We just like to have those at the end so that we can share that clip. So I appreciate you doing that. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right.
Thank you, Mary.
Yeah. Yeah, very good. All right, Lynn. So thank you very much for sponsoring the program today. I appreciate it. And I appreciate you both being here. Do you want to share just briefly what Legal Shield is? Quickly?
Yeah, let me just say that what we have provider firms all over the United States, and because we're a subscription service, we can do it for a very minimal cost. And we've disrupted the legal system a bit in that we aren't looking at trying to get, sort of longevity out of a client. We really want to get everything solved as quickly as possible. So I have a website that people can go to and actually look at all of the different areas of the service that are provided. And as you can see with Mary, you've got a full complement, and we do security for small businesses, on identity theft, cybersecurity for small businesses. So it's just, the website is Justice, JUSTICE, the number 4, all.biz, justiceforall.biz. And everyone, I believe, has my information, and I'm happy to answer any questions for you. And you can see that this is about helping people. And when I got involved, it has been such a gift for me to see the wide breadth of people that we work with, and what it means to have an attorney that they can call if they have an issue on a Christmas Eve and somebody's accused them of something, or 24/7 with an automobile accident or something that they just don't know what to do with. So we're there 24/7 for our customers, and it's been a remarkable experience for me as well. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. And by the way, guys, I've been a customer, and they've got a personal side. So I have 3 college-age kids that I was worried about driving and getting into wrecks. And so you can do a personal version of this, or you can do a business version of this. So please do check it out. And I put her website on the chat. Okay. So
thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Sure appreciate it once again, and appreciate Mary Rounds. Please pass that to her if she has left, for being on the show today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right. So I just want to let you guys know what's coming up on the 28th. Of course, we've got a networking session. Please do come. Please bring a friend. People are making connections. They're finding partnerships. They're finding customers. This is a really good place for us to collaborate, and people are finding a lot of value out of it. So I hope you can come. On June 4th, I'm going to have Suzanne Webb here. She's the CEO of eSurgeries, and they're doing some really breakthrough things around surgical centers. She's an entrepreneur, and her business is growing like crazy in the healthcare field. And then on June 12th, we've got our former mayor of Oklahoma City, and he led the Council of Mayors, as I understand it, across the U.S., Mick Cornett. So please sign up for a directory listing if you don't have one already. And that's if you've got a female CEO or president, or your company's half owned by women, or you have at least 20% women on the board. Let's see here. We've got a new service on our website. If you haven't done it yet, go to the website, fill out the block on the upper left-hand side, and it will give you a snapshot report that shows you how you look in cyberspace. And it'll really help you understand any gaps you've got in terms of how people, whether they can find you, how they find you, whether things are incorrect out there. It's just a very useful tool. Let's see here. Please download our Google Chrome extension from the website. Use your purse power directory. Let's buy from women. That's the point. And I hope you like and share our social media pages. So please let your friends know about this broadcast every Friday at 10 Central. And Lynn, is there anything else you want to add?
Just thank you. And please, any questions we can answer, I'd love to help.
Perfect. Thank you very much. All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for being here. And remember, purse power, we have it. Let's use it. Have a great week, and we'll see you next Friday. Thank you. Bye.